information. Thank you.
welcome. And for those of you who aren't sure, I am not Rick. He's out sick today. So thank you, Becky, for doing the bell toll. It's always nice to have you do that. It's always fun to have you here. Welcome to United Church of the Valley. As a progressive Christian community, we believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead to an experience of the sacred and the oneness and unity of all life. We also affirm that the teachings of Jesus provide but one of many ways to experience the sacred. We can draw from diverse sources of wisdom on our spiritual journey. So wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here. We know that the way we have behaved towards one another is the fullest expression of what we believe. Welcome to you who are here in the building, and welcome to you who are joining us online. Join me in the call to worship. In reverence, in wonder, in hope, we gather. With the mystery of God enshrouding us, together in community to worship God.
Hold on, let me figure out how to start this.
You say you see no hope. You say you see no reason we should dream that the world would ever change. You're saying love is foolish to believe, 'cause there'll always be some crazy with an army or a knife to wake you from your daydream, put the fear back in your life. Well, if someone wrote a play just to glorify what's stronger than hate, would they not arrange the stage to look as if the hero came too late? He's almost in defeat. It's looking like the evil side will win, when from the edge of every seat, from the moment that the whole thing begins, it's love that makes the mortar. It's love that stacked these stones, and it's love that made this stage here, though it looks like we're alone. In this scene set in shadows, like the night is here to stay. There is evil cast around us, but it's love that wrote the play. And in this darkness, love will show the way. Show the way. And now the stage is set. You can feel your own heart beating in your chest. This life's not over yet. So we get up on our feet and do our best to play against the fears, to play against the reasons not to try. We're playing for the tears, burning in the happy angel's eyes. For it's love that makes the mortar. It's love that stacked these stones, and it's love that made this stage here, though it looks like we're alone. In this scene set in shadows, like the night is here to stay. it's love that wrote the play. And in this darkness, love will show the way. Show the way. Show the way.
What a beautiful piece of music. Thank you so much for that. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I am Robin Dawson, and I am so honored to have been asked by Lynn Bradley to come share a message with you today and the things that I've been working on. So I really appreciate that. We're going to start with a reading from Philippians 2:14. And so if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to that, but I'll read the scripture as well. And so if you'd like, we can just listen along. Philippians 2:14 reads, "Do all things without grumbling or questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked generation, among whom you shine as lights of the world." There's a lot, and I mean a lot, to unpack there and to dissect. The first one in this, the word choice that gets me, is the word grumbling. Now, if you are familiar with Ruiz and the book, The Four Agreements, you know in detail the work that it takes to put the discipline of being impeccable in your word or your speech into practice. To summarize the book, to be impeccable in your word means to speak with integrity, say only what you mean, avoid using the word to speak against yourself or gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. Now, what I love about Ruiz's book in the Four Agreements is that when it talks about being impeccable in your speech, it's talking to us as humans, as errors, as fallible beings. But when we're talking about God, God was impeccable in his speech. And so when he used the word grumbling, he was very specific with that word. And I think slightly it's because God has a sense of humor. If you think of the last time you grumbled, I know for me, grumbling usually comes with a slur of curse words and usually strung together. But for like a more PG version of that, I think of Joe Pesci in Home Alone when he was trying to get Kevin, and under his breath, he'd always be like, you know, trying to get the kid. And so before we go too much into really dissecting all of this, just put a pause in that. And then I want you to think of the word blameless, because in that scripture it says, so we could be blameless. And before it says that, it talks about questioning. And I won't go too deep into the questioning portion of it because there's so much meat generally in the rest of this passage. But when he's talking about questioning, the instruction really is about not questioning out of thought, but questioning out of our intuitive self. The intuitive self that knows that there's a bear, you get out, you run, right? Not the knowledge or the thought or the idea of questioning that caused Eve to eat the apple. We're talking about the discernment, the idea of knowing our intuitive self. And so that's just a little bit when he's talking about questioning what he's referencing. So when we get into the next part of the scripture, he's talking about being blameless and innocent. And again, knowing that these words were chosen specifically with intent, with being impeccable, let's understand fully what this instruction is. The words used are blameless and innocent. And when you think about those words, they can be deeply felt. And what I mean by that is that if you think about a time that you were blameless about something, and I'm gonna take a leap of faith here and say that we're pretty much very self-aware and self-realized in this room. But to be truly blameless, I think of, and it's funny for me that my high school teacher is here because when I think of blameless, I think about, I really disliked doing my homework in high school. And so every time the teacher would come down the aisle and collect the homework that I didn't do, I always felt really uncomfortable and it didn't feel right. And I knew that I had work that I was supposed to do, but I didn't do it. But when I did my homework, even if something happened and a gust of wind happened and my paper blew away and I didn't have it, I knew I had done it. And so there was no defense of, even if the teacher didn't believe it, or let's say I was able to hand it in, I felt blameless. I had done the work. I was doing what was being asked of me. And so there was no defense. And so that feeling, and it's going to be different for everybody here, what that feeling is to be blameless, but it's nirvana. It is a really great feeling. And being blameless feels so much better than grumbling does. And although grumbling may seem incredibly innocent, there's a creeping danger in the word grumbling because it stems from a complacency in complaining. The dictionary use of grumbling is very straightforward, but what I really loved is their example of the use of grumbling in a sentence. And it says, despite his grumbling, he tried to exercise every day, which immediately I thought of Joe Pesci trying to exercise and grumbling. But when we are complacent in an area, it means that it's not pulling our attention. That means that it can go unnoticed because it seems unimposing and it's meant to be self-contained. But just because we don't realize it or we don't notice it, it doesn't mean that it isn't felt by others. And the moment that it becomes felt by others, we're no longer blameless. So as the verse continues, it says to be blameless and innocent in a crooked generation. And I am not going to go into a crooked generation. I feel like that is very self-explanatory. We all understand where we are. Just, I don't know where you guys are coming from, but for me, I am a socialist and I write content for a group called Jesus Was a Socialist. And so it says, among this crooked generation, so we can be lights of the world. Before I was diagnosed with cancer in March 2020, I owned a really busy flower shop. And when I say really busy, we had about 150 weddings every year, and there's 52 weeks in a year. So we were very busy. After having read Ruiz's 4 agreements, I started to dissect and explore, love the word explore, the word work. And this new approach to language and being impeccable in my speech, work, that was the word I wanted to focus on and talk about grumbling, right? That's like a really good place. I feel like many of us have grumbled about work in so many different aspects and areas in our life, whether it's going to work, homework. Anyway, but I allowed for me to explore why work had such a negative connotation. And simply stated, it was because of schoolwork. And when I was younger, when I had finished my elementary education of, sensory, coloring, art, nap time, snack time, recess, I had to start with schoolwork. And schoolwork meant doing something that was different than what I wanted. So when work started being synonymous with something different than what I wanted, it really started to form that negative connotation that continued with me in so many different areas. So as I was exploring being impeccable in my speech and this word of work that I really disliked, I started to change how I was looking at it. And I took the word work out of it. And I started writing my to-do list. And when I would write my to-do list, instead of 8 o'clock, go to work, get home, make dinner, all of those incidental things throughout the day, I started doing it in a way that I was saying, instead of go to work, what I had to do that day, make a bridal bouquet, make a centerpiece, and slowly, and then go home and make dinner. And slowly, as I started really putting these things in front of myself and redefining what it looked to work, not only was I taking the heaviness out of the word and my dislike of the word work, but I was becoming physically light. Because when I was able to sit down and look at everything that I had to do that day, I was able to start being very practical in real time about what needed to get done. I was able to start setting boundaries for myself and what additional I had, because I knew what I had to get done for that day based off of my little to-do list. And so as I was becoming physically light and emotionally and unburdenedly light, I could see a clarity of what had been hidden in dark. And we can see in light what had been hidden when we are exposed, when we are vulnerable, when we're available. Christ calls us time and time and time again in the Bible to be lights of the world. In Psalms, Psalm 36:9, in Acts 13:47, and I'll read for you Matthew 5:16, it's so appropriate with the other verse today. And Matt, I say Matt because we're like obviously really good friends. He says, "Let your light shine before man in such a way that they may see your good," and my favorite word, your good works, "and glorify your Father in heaven." And again, when we look at our Philippians verse, we are asking to be blameless and lights of the world in a crooked generation, not in darkness. And this is a very clear instruction. There are no exceptions. There is no fine print. So even in our complacent complaining, grumbling becomes a reflection of just how bright we're shining. And the more habitual, the more unnoticed it becomes, the more to the onlooker, the people that we've imposed that grumbling upon, to them, it appears that we're actually dimming our lights, the exact opposite of what we're being asked to do. And it's because whether or not we realize it, grumbling is usually a way to show displeasure to what is. Even if it's a small grumble like hitting your funny bone, because obviously the preference would have been to not have hit your funny bone. So when we combine these words, grumbling and blameless, and we dissect them and we put them back together, we can see very clearly that even the smallest complaint, the smallest grumble, can feel like resistance to what is, to what has already happened, and what God has created. In the book Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle writes that this behavior, this resistance, is futile. And he says, "What could be more futile, more insane, than to create inner resistance to something that already is?" Because when that happens, we're putting God into a box. God, who is blameless and free of mistakes, who is perfect. And unintentionally, when we deny what has already happened or the what is, we are fitting God into our narrative, to our wants, to our desires, or not getting our way and work and all of that fun stuff. But we're here by design. In 2017, I lost my home and my childhood home in the lilac fires of San Diego County. And in the following year, my fiance, so that was in December, in the following year of 2018, March, just a few short months later, my fiance and I ended our engagement because we couldn't struggle the difficulties of navigating that significant loss together in a safe and communicative way. And so even though I had an amazing therapist, I had a lot of pain. There was a lot of depression. And even making those appointments to talk to somebody felt like an incredible and an insurmountable amount of work. until the point that I could barely get myself out of the chair, let alone face anything that the day had in store for me. After several painful and devastating attempts of trying to get through The Power of Now, and if you're familiar with the book, it really is just kind of going over and over again in so many different ways, how to bring you into just living in the present moment. And there was a time that I was driving and I had some friends and kids in the car, and they were trying to change diapers, and the kids were screaming, and I'm trying to listen to this audiobook, and just chaos is ensuing as I'm listening to this author saying just to be present, to be loving and joyous. And I'm listening to his children scream, how do you do that? It seemed absolutely impossible. And so after failed attempts, I just broke down. I couldn't go anywhere else. I was as broken as I could have been. And I had to start changing. I had to start accepting that this is where I was. And I took a lot of time to start doing that work. And at that time, I hadn't restructured the word work, and it felt like work. After about a year of doing that, my then ex-fiance and I, both doing individual work and doing them at the same time, unbeknownst to each other, we had done so much work on our physical and emotional health that we tentatively reconciled. And I say tentatively because we both had become so happy and we understood what that looked like, what that felt like, and the relationship was not worth the sacrifice of that work and what we had done. So we wanted to see if we could maintain both of them. That happiness set the bar, really, truly. In 2020, about a year after that, I was diagnosed with a rare cancer, 1 in a million, adrenal cancer. Because of the tumor's significant size, it was hypothesized that it had been growing in me for quite some time. It was 18 centimeters. It was very significant. After a year of chemo and a painstaking process of trial and error, the tumor did not shrink, and I was left to have a very risky surgery where they had attempted to shrink it because I would lose vital organs and a lot of other things in the process. So unfortunately, that was the only option. And all I can say is that about that time, my oncologist's name was Dr. Moon. And in a very different hospital, in a very different city, in a very different area, my surgeon, who led a team of 4 different departments, had said that the stars had been in perfect and just alignment. At 38, I received a second chance. And do you guys want to know the good news? Our second chance, our collective second chance, comes with the freedom of redemption. It comes with the ability to choose to see the beauty in everyday sunsets, not just vacay sunsets, not just ocean view or mountain front sunsets. It comes with this ability, that feeling of those, and to take that and to radiate, to be the lights of the world. Being a light takes work. Just like generating light takes energy. The imagery that sits with me so strongly is the idea of carrying a torch in a very darkened room. And if you think of this, and I love this imagery because if you think about a torch, it's probably very cumbersome, it's probably very heavy and hot. And maybe I'd imagine that you don't start carrying a torch right away, that you have to build up that strength, or calluses on your hands or your arm or your muscles. There's a work that comes into being able to carry the torch and maybe we don't start by carrying the torch at all. Maybe we're just candles who take a little bit of light from the torch that has been lit. And as we grow and as we get stronger and we do our work, perhaps we all can get to a place where we're capable of carrying that torch. And those torches become these bright lights of the world. Now, remember a little while ago, I talked about when you become lighter, you become physically vulnerable, emotionally available. I talked about being truthful and honest and forgiving. When you forgive, you're letting go. And all of these things within the Bible are synonymous with Christ's word, God's love. And while Philippians 2:14 is an instruction, love was God's greatest commandment. And we already know that God was impeccable in his speech. As we leave today, I encourage you to spend some time exploring your own definition of the word blameless, and whatever that is for you, whatever that looks like, whatever that feels like. I want the word blameless to be synonymous with what it feels like in your body, because that is nirvana. And again, that's so much better than what it feels like to be grumbling. That little second of grumbling, being blameless is truly so much better. And then start to bring awareness to those grumblings. And maybe after so long of being aware of those grumblings, you start catching yourself, and maybe you start smiling as you're grumbling under your breath, just like you would kind of giggle at the movie Home Alone. And then maybe as you're getting stronger and you're doing that work, you start thinking the grumblings and you're not even saying them anymore. How good would that feel? And then maybe from there, you stop grumbling at all. It's not even a thought. And then you're just present and able to be in that perfect nirvana. Pretty soon, you're carrying your own torch. And let me tell you something. It is so much easier to extinguish a candle than it is a torch. Do all things without grumbling or questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked generation, among whom you shine as lights of the world, just as intently and as strongly and as hot as that torch is. That fire, that ignition, that love, that's what we're being asked to do. That's the work we're being asked to in instruction, as we're being asked to go be lights of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. That's really inspiring. And I've read the 4 agreements, so I've never read this. And just know you know this. Please don't think this is the only thing I took from that, but am I the only one that geeked out on the phrase resistance is futile? Everybody else gets that. At the United Church of the Valley, we seek to be inclusive of all people. We strive for peace and justice among all people. We strive to protect and restore the integrity of our earth. We commit to a path of lifelong learning, compassion, and love. We invite you to be part of this mission, and we thank you for your generosity. There's a collection plate for those of you who are here in person up front. And of course, all of us can make a donation by going to our website, ucvchurch.org, where you can use either PayPal or Venmo. In a beloved community, we care about one another and share their joys, sorrows, and concerns with each other. Whether here or in the building or at home on Zoom, just raise your hand and we will call on you. Briefly share your joys and concerns. And when I say together we pray, we will respond with "Hear us, O God." Jerry.
I have a concern. The concern is this will be the last time I'll be able to stand up and express a concern with a congregation of people. I think the word concern is more of a word that is what is happening at the moment and what you want to express as your feeling. I don't want to see it as a list that comes out a week before. I want us as a congregation I was raised in a congregation as a community of people who share their concerns and their actions and their prayers and their desires together as a community. And I'd like to see that to continue to happen. That's my concern there. I just wanted to express that. I joined this congregation because of the people that it's in it and the people that love one another and that respond to one another. And I would like to see that continue.
Together we pray.
Yes.
Donna?
Okay, because I'm with him, I like to do it here. There I am on the screen. No. I went and saw Archie, I was one of the first ones to get to go see him, they just opened up that one or two people at if Arch, the son lets you in, to see him. He looked good that day, because his son said his health is declining, his poor eyesight and his hearing's not too great, but we had a good conversation and, but I forgot to take the Dodger blankets to put over his blankets, his Boston blankets. We kidded about that. So anyway, he was doing good. He really enjoyed getting the quilt. That's one of our prayers and squares quilt that we blessed last week. And the other thing is we had a week of camp at home over Zoom, Camp in a Box, and they did that last week. And then starting Thursday, they're doing 2 sessions of camp up at Pilgrim Pines, and it's gonna be like a family camp. So Soleil, Bella, and I will be going in 2 weeks, and then we'll report how it goes, because at least we get to be on the mountain for a few days. And I'm so happy about that.
Together we pray. Kira, is there anybody online?
They are, but I don't have any messages yet, so looks like everyone's good there.
Anyone else? Together, maybe share a moment of holy silence. No matter how we understand prayer, we find that it is good to pray. Together we hold these names and words in a spirit of joy, a spirit of prayer, a spirit of concern, a spirit of connection. For all these words shared today and for all the words left unspoken, for all of these, together we pray. You're so good. The prayer Jesus taught his disciples, sometimes called the Lord's Prayer or the Our Father, is in the gospel 2 times. A long version is in Matthew with the Sermon on the Mount. A shorter version is in Luke. Let us pray together in one voice, the common version that connects us to our grandparents and great-grandparents. And then let us pray another version that speaks to the meaning of our longings and understandings of today. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and glory forever. Our Mother, who is in heaven and within us, we call upon your names. Your wisdom come, your will be done, in all the spaces in which you dwell. Give us each day sustenance and perseverance. Remind us of our limits as we give grace to the limits of others. So break from the temptation of empire, but deliver us into your community. For you who are dwelling within us, the power in it around us, and the celebration among us, now and forever. Amen.
Good morning, church family. At the communion table, we experience the kingdom. We celebrate in anticipation of the days when all the world will be fed because of compassionate actions following Jesus' example on the path for greater justice. Here we are encouraged and empowered to live the vision of the kingdom today as the body of Christ. Jesus' body was broken and poured out in the service of others. Having this meal together reminds us that we are not alone in the ongoing struggle for a just society and world. We share this struggle with our community in this room, on Zoom, and with the saints of the past, the present, and the future. At this table, may we be encouraged, be strengthened in community with Jesus and with each other. For the power of love in human life and history, we are grateful and full of joy. Our ancestors knew love's power, and they became the tellers of love's tale. Love bound them in covenant, teaching them to live in community with compassion and concern for the poorest among them. And in the struggle against oppression, Jesus became the face of love, showing us the way to abundant life. Filled with the courage and passion of love's spirit, he gave his life to challenge the unjust systems. On the night of his betrayal and arrest, as he shared a meal with his friends, Jesus took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, gave it to his followers, saying, "Share this bread among you. This is my body, which will be broken for justice. Do this to remember me." When supper was over, he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Share this wine among you. This is my blood, which will be shed for liberation. Do this to remember me." So now you at home, hopefully you have something to eat and something to drink to join us. The bread of life for all who hunger, the cup of compassion for a broken world. The table is ready and all are welcome. Please pray with me. God of love, Spirit of compassion, bless us and this bread and this juice. May this meal be food and drink for our journey, renewing, sustaining, and making us whole. May this meal nourish us and refresh us. May it strengthen us and renew us. May it unite us and bring us awareness of our presence in God's gracious love now and forever. Amen.
to do this without that wonderful circle that we usually have at the end. So let's imagine that and, dance with people in your family. Do so. So we stand. God go with you. May God walk where you walk, guide where you must make choices, comfort where you hurt, and surprise you with God's continuing love for you and who you are and what you do. Go in peace. Amen.
Amen.